Good morning, I think this is effectively the same bill that was defeated back in 2017, and there are elements of it for. Sorry? Okay, well, maybe if we debate it at second stage.
If you're going to have private discussions, you can have them outside.
That's
then here you'll
fair enough.
Share.
Well, I would say, firstly, I'll ask Corla, I'm not a landlord, but I think that even if I were, I think I would be, as a TD, I think I would be able to distinguish between, you know, to look at a piece of legislation or a proposal that comes forward on its merits. I think the idea that other colleagues can't, I think, is somewhat unfortunate, and you know, might grab a few headlines on that, but I don't think in reality I think it's a very unfair charge. But I'm not a landlord. I was actually previously, Deputy Barry, if you want to know, an accidental landlord before, as many other people are, who were left with a property that I actually lived in, that myself and my wife purchased at the height of the market and sold it at a substantial loss, which I'm still paying off. So I think there's lots of people like me in that boat. So I think if you want to demonise the 90% of people who are landlords who own, or of the landlords who own one or two properties, many of those who were left in this situation, well, that's fine. I think what I'm interested in is actual solutions. I think one element of the bill, if I could start, and I did read it, that I actually do wholeheartedly agree with, and that we did before, is in relation to how receivers and lenders who've taken possession of properties will be dealt with, that they should be included in the definition of a landlord. And indeed, Fianna Fáil actually put an amendment previously to the Residential Tenancies Bill 2016 for that very thing to happen, and we did discuss that with government at the time. It is something that we're still committed to do, and I would hope in the Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill that we will see this happen. But I want to pass legislation that actually makes a difference. We can be very simplistic about it, should we wish, Mick, and I think you know you're being simplistic with elements of it. I deal every single day of the week, unfortunately, with people who are homeless or on the threat of homelessness. If I thought for 1 minute that passing this bill, and particularly the element of completely disallowing the reason of sale for the issuing of an eviction notice, I'd vote for it. But I think you've got to try to convince us that that's actually constitutional, and that would stand up to a challenge. And unfortunately, from looking at it, and we've looked at it, don't believe that it would. I think there would be maybe an unintended consequence if this is something that you really wanted to do, and you didn't want to just grab headlines and try to sell a simplistic solution that you know won't work. Would be actually to say, well, how would you actually bring this in law? And I don't think that you actually could. And do you not believe that by bringing through this blunt measure like this, they would actually see a flight of many other individual landlords, and many of them who are good people, who have had tenants for years? I want to see increases of supply. I want to see stable housing. The Minister knows this very well. I've been highly critical of the over-dependency on housing assistance payments. We've got to work towards that. We've got to work towards cost rental models, and we've got to look at their implementation. But if we're telling people like Elaine, and I mean this with all due respect, Deputy Boyd Barrett as well, because many of us are dealing with Elaines and Seamuses and Michaels all over the country, that if I pass this bill now, that's going to stop future evictions or it's going to solve this crisis. It's not. And even on a temporary basis, I don't see how it would. I think it's simplistic, unfortunately, in the extreme. I think well-meaning elements of it, as I said, to turn to the receivership amendment, absolutely I think that needs to be done. The idea that premises are handed over, that homes are handed over and sales of where tenants are affected, tenants should not be affected. I do not see the reason for this. And I think when the Minister, when you respond here, I would like to know where that is at right now, because we have said as a party in Fianna Fáil that we ourselves will bring forward legislation in this regard if that is not done. I do think as well with the Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill, I've been very disappointed in my party also with the delays in that, but I would hope then that when the bill is finally published, that the elements of it that we can agree on, that we can move on with. And I've worked with Sinn Féin on this, with Deputy O'Brien, worked with you, Minister, as well, in relation to trying to strengthen tenants' rights and trying to look at the purpose-built student accommodation and others. And you know, the legality around tenancies, licence to reside, this whole market, it's not simple. And we've got to make sure it's incumbent upon us as elected members of this House that anything that we pass actually is constitutional, stands up to any legal challenges and can actually be done. I think we have a responsibility to do that, as opposed to just publishing an anti-evictions bill and saying, do you know what, this is the panacea to all our ills. It's not, and I think everyone knows that. And you know yourselves as proposers of the bill that there are elements of this that are deeply flawed. And I don't see, actually, with all due respect to Deputy Coppinger, much difference between this bill and the one that was presented before. Certainly the sentiment within it, particularly around the areas of inclusion of receivers and lenders, absolutely, that needs to be done, and we would wholeheartedly agree with that element of it. I think that the blanket prohibition of sale of property as a grounds for terminating a tenancy, I think, may lead to more people leaving the market and actually exacerbating the problem, driving up rents. That's not what I want to do, and that's not what my party wants to do, and that's why we could not support a piece of legislation that would actually do that. But I think on the receivership amendment element of this bill, I think absolutely that is something that we would support. Thank you.